Of course, we all know that education is a very, very significant tool, and especially when we talk about the long-term education goals. So it is education should also build the character, as well as it should also see that the learners, that it should enable the learners to develop the ethical, rational, compassionate, caring, and at the same time, the education should also prepare the learners for a gainful as well as fulfilling employment also. Now, in our country especially, there is a gap between the current state of learning outcomes and what is required, and that must be bridged through undertaking various reforms that is required, so that we can bring the highest quality as well as equity and integrity into the system of education. So it is very important, especially in higher education, that there is a lot of gap, because whatever is the current state of learning, that the students are having the skills and whatever that the knowledge that they are possessing, and what is required by the employers or what is required by the market. So there is a difference between these two. So it is very essential. We do require very important and major reforms. And it is towards this reform, NEP 2020 is one of the major thresholds where it tries to bridge the gap between the existing as well as the required, the employment scenario, the knowledge as well as the skill. And that is the reason, like even ICT is one of such type of a significant tool which can help in bridging this particular gap. And now the aim must be for India to have the education system by 2040, that is, which is second to none, with equitable access to the highest quality education for all learners, regardless of socioeconomic background. So irrespective of the background of the student, like whatever is the differences are there, by 2040, we want to achieve a very, very high quality education for all the learners. And what is the vision of our 2020 policy? So the National Education Policy, it envisions an education system rooted in Indian ethos that contributes directly to transforming India, that is Bharat. Now, the very important vision, the very preamble starts with that education system, like which is because as we all know that India is a country which is known for its rich heritage, known for its rich culture. So we want to transform India into Bharat through this, using the national education policy reforms into an equitable, a vibrant knowledge society. So by providing, so how do we make it a equitable and a vibrant knowledge society? That is by providing high quality education to all, and thereby making India a very global knowledge superpower. So we want to make India a global knowledge superpower through the quality in education. So living in a world where information technology has become a tool for work, a means of empowering people, and an avenue for entering into enormous world, narrowing distances as well as establishing relationship. So now we are living into a world where the information technology is a very, very important tool, whether it is for successful life or whether it is for work. It has become a means for empowering the people. And it is through these information communication technologies we can narrow the distances and narrow the relationships which are there between the people or among the people. So globalization and technological change processes that have accelerated in tandem over the past few years have created a new global economy powered by technology, fueled by information, and driven by knowledge. So all these aspects, they go together. So it is powered by technology, fueled by information, and which is driven by knowledge. So the rapid breakthroughs in new information and communication technologies is changing the way knowledge is developed, acquired, as well as it is again processed, as well as it is transformed. The way that knowledge was acquired, the way the knowledge was developed, and the way that the knowledge was transmitted traditionally is different from like what we are doing it in the modern world because of the availability of communication technologies. So the emergence of this new global economy has serious implications for the nature and purpose of educational institutions. As technology has entered all walks of life, so educational institutions, or maybe the domain of institutions, cannot be an exception to this. So this educational, that is the new global economy, and this technology has a lot of implications for educational institutions too. And these technologies, they can offer opportunities to innovate, to create the course contents, and it can also be helpful in teaching methods, as well as it can widen access to higher learning. So it provides an opportunity for teachers for effective teaching, as well as various ways and modes and channels, and through various directions, even the learners can access education or learner or acquire the knowledge. And it helps in the teaching methods and also helps in learning, and there can also be opportunities for innovation as well as creation. Also, what is ICT? So the ICT stands for Information and Communication Technologies. As a diverse, ICT is nothing but a diverse set of technological tools and resources used to communicate, to create, to disseminate, to store, and manage information. So anything which is being used, any technological tools and resources which are used for the communication purpose, for the creation of content or material purpose, for dissemination of information or knowledge, or for storing purposes, and for management of information. So it is all called as nothing but they are information communication technologies. And these technologies include, they can be computers, there can be internet sources, there can be broadcasting technologies, maybe like mobile phones, telephony, or radio, including television. All these are nothing but information communication technologies. So it can also be defined as tools and applications, application support through which, or by means of which, information is transferred, recorded, edited, stored, manipulated, and disseminated, and with enormous quantities in the minimum possible time. Of course, we all know, even with the earlier, for typing, we used to use the very traditional typewriters where we used to type the material, and later we got these electronic typing materials. Even if there is a one or two mistakes in a page, we had to rewrite or we had to retype the whole page in case if we don't, if we didn't require any typing errors, like if we didn't want to just put an ink or just overwrite it. But now with the availability of these technological tools, the information can be recorded, it can be edited any number of times, and it can be transferred to multiple people, and it can be disseminated in enormous quantities. That means, as we all know, even in a small pen drive, you can just save lot of material or information or a data, and it can also be again transferred in a minimum, within seconds you can transfer the materials or information to the people in any corner of the world. Now, because we have social media, we are having other emails, we are having the telephony, we are having so many sources through which the information, enormous information in quantities, can be shared within no seconds to any part of the world. And that is possible because of these information communication technologies that are available to us. And what is an educational technology? When we say information communication technology, it can be a general one. And actually, NEP speaks about educational technology. So what is this educational technology? So educational technology is an inclusive term for both the material tools and the theoretical foundations for supporting learning and teaching. So whatever the technological tools we are using, as well as theoretical foundation. Theoretical foundations means for teaching and learning, there are so many theories which have been used in order to develop the content, in order to develop the text, in order to develop the curriculum, develop the syllabi. There are a lot of things you need to keep it in mind. So it is both hardware as well as the software, as well as the various theoretical aspects that we need to keep it in mind. So it is not just restricted to high technology, but anything that enhances classroom learning into utilization of blended or face-to-face or online learning. All these things put together, we call it as educational technology. Whether it is in a face-to-face traditional classroom, whatever the teacher uses, right from the chalk piece to maybe a blackboard to even a sometimes when we talk about educational technology, usually people, they just mistake it and they think of only computers. The people only think of television or maybe a mobile phone or maybe a internet, only such things. No, educational technology is not limited to only these electronic gadgets. It is something beyond that. Even traditionally, whatever we are using, even a piece of chalk, even a blackboard, a chart, a picture, a specimen, a model, right, and an experiment or any activity based aspects, apart from all the electronical gadgets that we are using in the present day, all these things put together, whether we use it in a face to face traditional teaching learning, or whether we are using it in a blended mode, or we are doing it on online, all these things put together, we call it as educational technology. Now, educational technology can encompass, it includes your electronic learning or e-learning, it includes your instructional technology, it includes your information communication technology, which is used in education, that is edutech, learning technology, multimedia learning, as well as technology, that is advanced learning, right? There are the technology enhanced learning. All these aspects, it's not only limited to this, all computer assisted instruction, computer aided instruction, right? There are postcards, so many things are there. All that we can put it as a part of educational technology. So these aspects, e-learning, instructional learning, like edtech, ICT in education, learning technology, multimedia technology, technology enhanced learning, they are all part of educational technology. So, education, technology use and integration in NEP 2020. When we talk about NEP 2020, so the NEP has spoken about the integration of technology for educational purpose. So, Educational Technology Forum, it has spoken that the um, through the center, Educational Technology Forum, known as, that is a National Educational Technology Forum, NETF, will be created to provide a platform for the free exchange of ideas on the use of technology to enhance learning, assessment, as well as the teaching. Now, if you continue, the NEP 2020 speaks about, so the National Educational Technology Forum, which is going to be created by the center, that is called as NETF. It has visualized certain functions for this NETF. That is to provide independent evidence-based advice to central as well as state government agencies and technology-based interventions. So technology-based interventions for the purpose of education. That for the purpose of education, it may be for teaching, maybe for learning, maybe for assessment, maybe for feedback, maybe for like interconnectivity, maybe for creating the interest based forums for the administration, maybe for portfolio creation, anything which is in the domain of education, in the field of education. And that too, it has to be an evidence based advice. Evidence based in the sense, when technology is used for teaching, it has to show like how is it effective, or it has enhanced the learning of the students with the intervention of technology compared to the conventional mode of teaching. When it comes to the use of technology in learning, how far that it has created a learning students engagement, and how far it has led to self-learning or independent learning on the part of the students. Apart from that, it is also what we say that evidence-based, how far that it is helping in, whether it is administration or maybe in of getting feedback, or maybe in assessment, enhancing teaching learning. So there has to be an independent evidence-based advice both to the central agencies as well as to the state government agencies on technology-based interventions. So another important function of this NETF will be to build intellectual and institutional capacities in educational technology. So building in intellectual and institutional capacities. What is this intellectual? That is maybe teaching the teachers, the supporting staff, or maybe the learners or the students, that is understanding the hardware, maybe the software, the use of it, maybe the training, the capacity building in the use of it. Institutional capacities maybe like hiring the professionals, or giving training to these staff who are going to use the technology for education, and also maybe the use of these hardware technologies as a part of the institutional's requirement. So build intellectual as well as institutional capacities in educational technology. That is another function of NETF. Envision strategic thrust areas in this domain. So in education, what exactly, in what areas that technology should be used as a intervention. So where it is required, whether it is in thrust should be whether on teaching, on learning, on assessment, on administration, on portfolio, or maybe interconnections, or maybe or building the forums, or whether it is a subject wise, whether it is for teaching science or for teaching mathematics, whether it is teaching for languages or for social sciences. How are we going to use it? So probably you must be knowing, even government of Karnataka is having these technology based interventions at the school level, that is for mathematics, for science, as well as in social studies. So there are a lot of uh, television interventions, audio interventions have been that is the broadcastings have been used. They are all nothing but technology interventions in the area of education. So strategic thrust areas need to be identified in this domain. But apart from that, we need to articulate new directions for research and innovation. So in case if you want to have evidence-based this intervention of technology, it also requires the new research in the research as well as the innovations, maybe in the field of education when we are using technology. So how far that the technology is useful compared to the traditional or conventional mode, whether the intervention of technology has enhanced teaching, learning, maybe administration, maybe assessment. So for knowing that, you require further research. So there has to be new directions for research, and there should also be new innovations, and that research and innovations is also the function of that NETF. And the thrust of technological interventions will be far. So now I said, so what should be the technological interventions, where that should be used, like technological interventions. So the National the Technology, Educational Technology Forum will have a thrust on improving teaching, learning, as well as evaluation process. As I said, whether it is for teaching or for learning or for evaluation. So the thrust will be on improving all the three. That is for the improving the teaching effectiveness by the teachers, and the learning, that is retention of learning, mastery of learning by the students, and the assessment process, that is the evaluation process. Because many a times we know that traditionally it takes a lot of time to evaluate, and nowadays with the intervention of technology like computers and all that, it is able to assess, give the results within no time. So for evaluation purpose, apart from that, for supporting teacher preparation and professional development. So preparing, supporting teacher preparation. So when we expect the teachers to use technology in teaching and learning, as well as for assessment, that is in the classroom or maybe in their institution, it is very essential that we need to prepare teachers with those capabilities. We need to even train teachers through professional development programs. So supporting teachers in preparation, that is the new teachers, and maybe developing the professional development of teachers in use of these technologies, that is hardware, softwares, or maybe the development of the content or whatever it is. So for the professional development of teachers, supporting of that is should also be the function of that forum. And apart from that, enhancing educational access. So now, actually, traditionally, conventionally, education was limited only to maybe the educational institutions, that is to the schools and colleges. And later, we ventured with the distance mode of education. And now with the availability of these technological tools, so it can enhance the educational access through online mode programs or through online mode courses also, which can provide access to, there can be access to thousands and thousands, and it can also be beyond that millions of people. So the technology can enhance educational access. It can also streamline educational planning, management, administration, including process related to admissions, attendance, assessment, etc. Of course, you know, like almost all the institutions, right from schools to universities, colleges, they are all using these technologies for the planning purpose, for the management purpose, for the administration purpose. So, which may be related to the admission of students or attendance of students or assessment of students. So, for all these aspects, that the technology intervention can be made use of. And apart from that, the one of the another important function of this National Educational Technology Forum will be to provide a very rich variety of educational softwares for all the above purposes. Now, when we want the lot of softwares for teaching purpose, for learning purpose, for assessment, for administration purpose, and for management purpose, for making, preparing the portfolios, for everything we require a variety of educational softwares. So another important function of this NFT YAF will be to provide a variety of educational softwares for all the what said the those purposes will be developed and made available for students as well as teachers at all levels. It may be at the school level, maybe at the college level, or maybe it is at the university level. For all levels, the different types of softwares will be prepared for teaching, learning, assessment, admission, planning, management, and that would be made available for the students and the institutions and teachers by this educational technology forum. And all such softwares will be available in all major Indian languages and will be accessible to a wide range of users, including students in remote areas and Divyang students. So the NEP 2020 is very, very ambitious in saying that not only that it will be available only in foreign language English, but it would be made available in almost all the major Indian languages which are recognized languages, and that would also be accessible to wide range of users, including the students in remote areas or maybe the rural areas, apart from the Divyang students, or maybe what we call it as the students who are like partially or maybe fully the students who are blind, what we call it as Divyang students, the students who cannot see. They want to develop such softwares where these partially or fully students disability, right? The students, the visual disability, the students with visual disability, the Divyang students. So these type of softwares will be made available even to such type of students, and also to the rural students, and that will be available in almost all the remote languages. And the NEP 2020 policy has been formulated at a time when an unquestionably disruptive technology that is artificial intelligence or 3D or 7D virtual reality has emerged. So now we are in an age of artificial intelligence. AI is used, whether it is a 3D or a 7D virtual reality has emerged, and NEP 2020 is formulated in such a very, very important time. So, wherein we have tried to integrate and where we have tried to put everything in our NEP 2020 as the major reforms for our education system, right from the pre-primary, like what we call it as foundational stage, to the higher education or to the tertiary education. And one of the very important or permanent task of National Educational Technology Forum will be to categorize emergent technologies based on their potential and estimated time frame for disruption, and to periodically present this analysis to MHRD. So the NEP 2020 wants to use almost all the emergent technologies. Of course, you must have seen most of the higher education institutions, they have introduced courses on data sciences, or maybe like what we call it as artificial intelligence courses are already started. And even at a school level, they are talking about now the data science and all that. So for that, the students would be taught to use the emergent technologies because of their potential, whatever the potentiality that the technology possesses. And maybe as and when there will be new emergence of technologies, that should be used, because after some time these technologies, because there is a bombardment of knowledge, science and technology, and every day there is a new technology is emerging, and some of the old technologies are becoming obsolete, and it has a time frame, right? So we need to discard the old technologies which are no more, that would be useful when there are emergent new technologies that need to be used. And that is also the function of these NETF to be present the periodic report regarding these technologies to the MHRD. So based on these inputs, the MHRD will formally identify those technologies whose emergence depends the responses from the education system. So automatically, MHRD would also identify the emerging technologies, and they see that these emerging technologies need to be used in the education system, so that we stay up to date, maybe in the use of technology, so that the education system of India would be made so powerful that we should become a superpower in the country. And for school education, the NEP 2020 has spoken about teaching learning e-content will be continued to be developed by all states in all the regional languages, as well as by the NCRT, CIET, CBSC, NEOS, National Institute of Open Schooling, and other bodies and institutions, and will be uploaded onto the Diksha platform. So this Diksha platform will be available to all the teachers, will all the resources will be uploaded, developed by all the state agencies as well as the national agencies, where the e-content will be available for both teaching and learning, and that would be made available to the schools and maybe to the institutions, to the teachers as well as to the students on the Diksha platform. And CIET, Center for Institute of Educational Technology, Central Institute of Educational Technology, that CIET, will be strengthened to promote and expand Diksha as well as other educational technology initiatives. There are so many educational technology initiatives which are started by several agencies. And the Central Institute of Educational Technology, which was earlier a part of NCRT, so that is going to be strengthened, and that would promote as well as help Diksha platform to expand its educational technology initiatives. And suitable equipment will be made available to teachers at schools so that teachers can suitably integrate e-contents into teaching learning practices. So it is in case if you want to use technology interventions, so it is very important that these gadgets are made available at the school level or at the higher education institutions. So without the availability of these technological tools, it is not possible to have technological interventions. And apart from that, it is also not only it is sufficient if you provide the suitable equipment, we also need to train the teachers, whether at the school level or maybe at a higher education level, that is how to use these technological tools, the emerging technologies, because earlier when we were using probably the transparencies through the OHP, and once the computers have come and we need to use these PowerPoints, we need to learn to prepare PowerPoints, we need to present through the PowerPoints, maybe using the various SaaS products, or we are having SaaS, we have Google Meet or WebEx, or so many yeah, WebEx, so many platforms are available. So teachers should be made trained in utilizing this type of softwares as well as hardwares. The training should be given suitably to the teachers also, where they should learn to integrate the e-content into teaching and learning practices. And apart from that, it is also the NEP 2020 has spoken about the online and digital education in order to ensure the equitable use of technology. And of course, we were talking about there is a lot of gap between, there is a digital divide. So the digital divide is between rural and urban digital divide, and there is a digital divide between the people belonging to different socioeconomic status. There was a digital divide between the men and women, right? So in order to see that, ensure there is a equitable use of technology, as it is already said, that the digital technology or technology access will be made available to all the students, including students or maybe teachers or education institutions in remote areas or rural areas, including students who are visually challenged or Divyang students, in order to ensure the equitable use of technology. So the NEP 2020 recognizes the importance of leveraging the advantages of technology while acknowledging its potential risk as well as dangers. Of course, we all know as teachers, as parents, right, as stakeholders, we all know that the use of technology has its own advantages if utilized properly for educational purpose. At the same time, it has its own potential risk as well as the dangers when it comes to the learners, right from the school age, maybe till the students who are at a tertiary level also. So it is very important that we need to recognize the advantages, and also we need to see the potential risk and dangers, how to prevent, and how to have used the safeguards to see that there are no potential risks and dangers. And it also calls for carefully designed and appropriately scaled pilot studies to determine how the benefits of online and digital education can be reaped while addressing or mitigating the downsides. So, when we are talking about the benefits of online education or digital education, and of course, it has its own advantages, especially at a higher education level, but I don't think that these digital or online programs can be very, very effectively used at a very, very lower levels of schooling, or maybe at a lower levels of education. But even in higher education, we should see the potential risks, and we should see how that the advantages can be reaped. At the same time, you need to address and mitigate the downsides or maybe the dangers of utilizing of these online and digital technologies in education. So in the meantime, the whatever the existing digital platforms or maybe the ongoing ICT based educational initiatives are there, we need to optimize and we need to expand to meet the current and future challenges in providing quality education to all. So already we are having some digital platforms, and there are also ongoing ICT based educational initiatives and technology interventions. We need to fully utilize these type of initiatives which are already ongoing, and we need to further expand in order to meet the current as well as the future challenges, so that we provide quality education for all the learners, or maybe the people, provide access to each and every one who are accessing education with the technological tools for interventions. The teachers require suitable training and development to be effective online educators. As we all know, like during the COVID, where there was no readiness either on the part of teachers or learners, or maybe the educational institutions, even the parents, that it was a the pandemic maybe all over the world. Suddenly it brought a sort of a stagnation on the conventional mode of institutions teaching, learning, and where it had put the teachers into a very very tight situation suddenly to utilize these online teaching, where the teachers probably were not prepared in the use of this type of tools, whether they are softwares. And as you would all know, that there were also teachers as well as the students who hardly had any technological gadgets, either the computers or maybe the laptops, and even the mobile phones with the internet connectivity, right, to use it. Like suddenly at the time of COVID, we know how much hardship that the teachers have undergone because they did not possess suitable training. So in order to have a very effective, that is online education, that effective online education, teachers require a very suitable training as well as, and for giving suitable training, we need to develop effective online educators. That is very important. And it also, we cannot assume that a good teacher in a traditional classroom will automatically be a good teacher in an online classroom. A teacher may be a very, very good teacher, maybe in a traditional or conventional classroom. But until and unless a teacher is given the training in the use of a hardware or a software, how to use it and how to prepare the material or maybe the content, and how to transact the material or disseminate the material, and you cannot assume that a traditional classroom teacher will automatically be a good teacher in an online classroom until and unless they are given the suitable training. And apart from that, there are certain changes which are required in pedagogy. That is, online assessment also requires a different approach. So whatever we were doing conventionally, maybe in for the assessment, probably we were doing only the traditional marking system. But when it comes to the assessment, that is online assessment, it requires a different approach. And that also the teachers need to have a different training in order to do the assessment. And apart from that, the different pedagogy. Pedagogy means like how we teach, maybe in a traditional classroom. So maybe in an online classroom, we need a different pedagogy. That like whether we are using the PowerPoint, whether you are using animation, whether you are using a audio, whether you are using visuals, you are maybe you are using what we call it as YouTubes, or you are using animations, simulations. So it requires a different pedagogy when you are going for a online teaching also. And there are, apart from that, there are so many other challenges in conducting the online examination at scale, including limitations on the types of questions that can be asked in an online environment, maybe handling network and power disruptions and preventing unethical practices. And of course, there are a lot of challenges. If you are conducting online examination at a scale, that means uh, if it is for lakhs of students at a time, then there are so many challenges. You need to make available such type of maybe the online hardwares and software to the students for examination. and that also have a limitation type of questions. Usually, most of the time, the type of questions which are asked for assessment in an online program, they are only usually the multiple choice type of questions, or what we call it as maybe very simple what objective type questions, not beyond that. You cannot go for a essay type of questions, and there cannot be a correct marking in an online environment, but which we usually do it in a traditional mode. If at all, if you want to understand the students' level of understanding, the not just merely the knowledge level of understanding, analysis, synthesis, critical analysis, or maybe the debate, or maybe the students' language, the students' way of organizing the material, and that can be done only through a very long type, or maybe what we call it as essay type of questions and answers, which is not possible in an online mode of examination usually. And of course, we know, like earlier we had these net examination, where earlier traditionally we used to have, since for a long time, when it started very traditionally, I was one of the paper setters as well as the examiners. We used to do it in Pune, later shifted to Delhi. There used to be three levels of papers, you all know as teachers, like very long answers, and short and very short type of, and they used to be assessed physically. And later we converted it to the online mode, so that the results and all can be given immediately and easily. Then just it was converted to only objective type, wherein you cannot assess maybe the deeper understanding of a student, the analytical abilities, or maybe the synthesizing abilities, maybe the students language ability, the you students maybe the ability to organize and summarize and to conclude. So apart from that, that you cannot assess through these online examinations. Apart from that, there can also be problem of networking. There can also be a power disruptions. Now probably that I couldn't have the access for sharing the material. Almost nearly 7 to 8 minutes it took me again to come back online. And there can sometimes power disruptions when there is a power failure. Sometimes it becomes difficult for an online presentation, or maybe accessing of material. And also there can also be preventing of unethical practices. Sometimes maybe difficult, maybe checking may become sometimes difficult, though there are a lot of nowadays you are seeing these digital fraud when it comes to finance, when it is come to people are hacking off the information. So they are all some of the unethical practices. So you need to prevent these type of unethical practices also. That is very, very important. That is also a challenge. And apart from that, there are other yeah, some certain types of courses and subjects, maybe like performing arts, and maybe science practicals. They have limitations in the online or digital education space, which can be overcome to a partial extent with innovative measures. Maybe with innovative nowadays, people are giving even in performing arts, yoga, dance, like all these type of things online, which maybe people sitting at their home, they are trying to imitate and they are trying to do it. That is only to a partial extent, but still maybe teaching of a skill, or teaching of a performance, or maybe a practical experiment, or maybe teaching of certain very, very important whether it is medical skills or engineering skills or experimental skills, and some of the performing arts, maybe the mastery in that is limited when it comes to the digital or online education spaces, and they are the challenges. And further, unless online, I'm talking about ICT in education issues and challenges also, and what NEP has spoken about the integration of technology. So until and unless online education is blended with experiential and activity-based learning, it will tend to become a screen-based education with limited focus on the social, affective, and psychomotor dimensions of learning. So if it is purely an online education, then it limits the development of social development of the learners, or maybe people, affective development, psychomotor dimensions of learning. When the you all know, when the during the pandemic, that is COVID 19, usually what happened, many people, when the children went back to the school, there was a some sort of adjustment problem for the little children, because if you continue that type of only online education with the children, or maybe primary elementary level, it hampers the social development or language potential of the children. And even among, see, when on a physical mode, the people, whether it is a supporting staff, whether they are teachers or colleagues, we have, apart from a professional relationship, there is also a social relationship among the people as human beings. There is also a affective aspects that is developing, like positive attitudes, bondage, relationship, emotional bondage between the students and the teachers, or among the children as friends, right? And psychomotor dimension, development of skill. So all these aspects will be missing when we go for only online mode. So what is there has to be we can talk about these technological interventions better with a blended mode. Blended mode in the sense, there has to be a experiential and activity based learning, where the students or learners should have an opportunity to see, to touch, to do, right? So there has to be a mingling, physical mingling with the students, with the teachers, with the physical institutions where there is a physical reality, apart from the online and digital programs. So, which otherwise the only online program, they become screen based education. So, the education system should not just with the technological interventions, we cannot reduce the education system to a screen based education. We can go for a blended mode of education. So, further, given the emergence of digital technologies and emerging importance of leveraging technology for teaching and learning at all levels, from school to higher education, further, the policy 2020 recommends the following as key initiatives. So, in order to overcome certain challenges with the emergence of digital technologies for teaching and learning, the policy further recommends a few initiatives. Those among those, one is that pilot studies for online education. Even before certain emerging technologies are directly introduced, it wants certain type of pilot studies for online education. So pilot studies, that is initially to check, so what would be the success rate, and how are we going to modify our online education, what are its advantages, and what risk it has got, what dangers it has got, in order to check, in order to prevent such type of risk and dangers, to see what are the advantages, how that can be enhanced, and how that can be made more effective. So for that, the 2020 has, excuse me, would somebody would put off your microphone? It has recommended some of the very, very important appropriate agencies like National Education Technology Forum, Central Institute of Educational Technology, National Institute of Open Schooling, IGNO, IITs, NITs. So they all can be the national level agencies. They can be identified to conduct the pilot studies where these emerging digital technologies can be used in the field of education, to evaluate the benefits of integrating education with online education. So how that the traditional or conventional education system be integrated with these online education using digital technologies, to evaluate the benefits. So some of these very, very important central agencies can be used for conducting the pilot test studies for online education. And the next important uh, advice or suggestion given by NEP 2020 is about digital infrastructure. So it has spoken about there is a need to invest in creation of open, interoperable, as well as evolvable public digital infrastructure in the education system or to the sector to solve for India's scale, diversity, complexity, and device penetration. So, of course, we all know India, a country with diversity. We have a lot of regional imbalances, geographical imbalances. We have a lot of geographical imbalances in the sense we have the educational institutions which are probably maybe surrounded by forests or maybe the lakes, rivers, surrounded by hilly areas which are not easy to access. That is very difficult to access education, and people with lot of diversity, ethnicity. So we need to have create such type of open interoperable like digital infrastructure, wherein we should see that all these people will be taken into the fold of education by creating the digital infrastructure wherein access is available to almost all types of people. And apart from that, online teaching platforms and tools. So it is also spoken about that appropriate existing e-learning platforms already existing like Swayam. We are already having that platform, and now we are going to have Diksha, and these will be extended to provide teachers with a structured, user-friendly, rich set of assistive tools for monitoring progress of learnings. So it should help the teaching platform as well as the tools, or online teaching platforms and tools like Diksha and Swayam. So they should be further extended to provide teachers with the helping hand so that they will use a user-friendly and rich set of assistive technologies so that they can check for the students' progress and use the material which is available on these ports, right, on this platform, that is for effective delivery of knowledge. The other important aspect which NEP 2020 has spoken about, which the National Education Technology Forum is going to take it as its responsibility. Apart from the other central agencies, there can also be other institutions, universities, and state agencies, and the teachers, and all that. Content creation, digital repository, and dissemination. So one is you need to create the content, innovative content, especially we are talking about e-content and digital repository, and these content need to be uploaded, right, for the use of benefit of many people, and that should be made accessible to the people, that is through dissemination. So creating content, storing content, and disseminating content is very, very important. So a digital repository of content, including creation of coursework materials, so the learning games for the students and simulations where there can be experiments, where there can also be demonstrations through games and simulations. There can be augmented reality, virtual reality, all these types of things need to be content material, games, simulations, virtual and augmented realities, right? They need to be developed, they need to be stored, and they need to be disseminated or made accessible to the people. And apart from that, as I already said, it is not just merely creating, storing, and dissemination. You should also address the digital divide. Check for that whether that digital content or material which is stored whether it is accessible to each and every person. If it is not accessible, then it leads to the digital divide again. So the existing mass media, whatever it is, whether it is a television, whether it is a radio or a community radio, will be extensively used for 24/7 telecast and broadcast in different languages. So they have said the materials can be disseminated in almost all the inaccessible areas to the people in remote areas by using the mass medias like television and radio as well as community radio. So these community radios are like maybe in blocks or maybe in rural areas where there can be community centers are there where such type of televisions or radios can be placed, and that can be extensively used 24/7 either for telecast or broadcast in different languages that can address these digital divide or a digital gap. Apart from that, maybe establishing the virtual labs. So existing e-learning platforms to be leveraged for creating virtual labs. So there are e-learning platforms are there. We need to have even virtual labs. That means there has to be a gaming and simulation programs should be there. So wherein the students in such type of simulative labs, that is virtual labs, the students will be able to have almost a real like experience through these virtual labs in experimenting things through simulations. And apart from that, training and incentives for teachers. So we talk about only the use of technology, but the least we talk about training and supporting the teachers. So training is very, very essential for the usage of technology interventions. Many times what happens, in order to encourage teachers to utilize this technology, learn this technology, develop interest in use of technology for teaching, learning and assessment, there can also be incentives for teachers who utilize these technology extensively and very effectively. So that way teachers will undergo rigorous training in learner-centered pedagogy and on how to become high-quality online content creators themselves. So for such things, there should be some sort of incentives should be given to the students, sorry, for the teachers, so that they are encouraged, they feel recognized for their use of technology interventions, that is for creating the materials, for the delivery of materials. And apart from that, there should also be online assessment and examinations. So the digital platforms can be used, they can be designed, and there can be an implementation of online assessment frameworks encompassing competencies, portfolio, rubrics, standardized assessments, and assessment analytics. So when you are conducting exams online, how to assess? So there has to be some framework. How should the different competencies should be assessed? If it is a portfolio that each student is presenting, how to assess it? In case if it is a rubrics, like how rubrics in the sense, what should be the procedure for assessing maybe a response of a student? There should be certain standard assessments which should be common to all. In case if it is a multiple choice, so whatever the rubrics that is standard procedure that you have prescribed for assigning the marks or maybe for assigning of weightages, that should be common across all the examinations for all the assessments. So there has to be standardized assessments and assessment analytics. That should be the another important part for implementing of online assessment frameworks. And then blended models of learning. So apart from digital platforms, we are also talking about different effective models of blended learning to be identified for appropriate replication for different subjects. whether it is a science, mathematics, social sciences, or languages, you need to give education in a blended mode, that is both online as well as offline. Offline, maybe in the conventional or in a traditional mode in the schools and colleges, or online mode or through the use of online platforms. For different subjects, you need to identify the use of different subjects for a blended model. So, maybe in the end, in conclusion, we can just say that, of course, whatever the national education policy 2020 has spoken about the integration of information communication technology, it is not in isolation, because India is a country with which stands first, maybe when it comes to the population now or even the human resources, and we are a country with the youngest population in the world. So, with that, if at all, if you want to make your education system very, very effective, if you want to be recognized and identified on the world map as a super knowledge power, then in that case, your education system should become qualitative. Maybe starting from your foundational stage to the tertiary or the university level, you should provide a quality education. So, in order to provide a quality education or a effective education, maybe right from the beginning, from the foundational state, maybe use of all the senses is very, very important. That is seeing, hearing, touch, right? Everything is very important. For involving all the senses, apart from your experiential learning, activity based learning, this technological intervention can come along a long way in making our education more and more effective, because through online mode, because in a conventional mode it is not possible to have 24 bar 7 education, because there's a fixed place, there's a fixed time, there is a fixed teacher available for each subject, there's a fixed classroom situation or a environment where the information or a knowledge is delivered or skills are developed. But when it comes to online education, it has a very, very huge potential, which is available to the learners 24 bar 7. So that can make our youth or make our students more and more effective in not only gaining knowledge, maybe in developing the whatever the required skills of a 21st century citizen, whether it is in communication, whether it is networking, whether it is connecting to various forms, or whether it is dissemination of information, whether it is the use of technology, because we all know that the more younger the generation, the more they are addicted to technology. That is what we call it as, we teachers, like I'm talking about myself, we are called as X generation, and some of you are all Y generations, and there are also children who are Z generation. Now we are talking about alpha generation, beta generation, or what we call it as data generation, maybe gamma or something like that. So the emerging technologies which are there, they are going to be changing almost every fortnight. So we need to integrate those emerging technologies into our education system. Only then we can bring our children very close to reality, even in our classrooms, in our educational institutions, where he should not, the student should not feel isolated from life, because he is surrounded by technology in his life. When it comes to the educational institutions, he should carry that same experience for learning also. Only then he can connect himself, like whatever he has learned, to his real life transformation of knowledge or skills are possible. Otherwise, it is not possible to transform the knowledge and skill learned in a conventional method to the real life situations. So, from that point of view, this NEP 2020, this policy, it seeks to leverage the huge potential of online pedagogy as well as learning methodology for increasing gross enrollment in higher education also. So whatever the higher education that we are having, whether it is 27% or 29%, maybe like post-independence, our overall literacy, right from school education to the higher education, the total literacy itself was only 12 to 13%. But now when it comes to literacy, we are almost close to 78 to 80%. When it comes to higher education, almost we are close to 30%, 29 to 30%. By the policy aims to have by 2030, we need to reach to 50% of enrollment in higher education. If that is our vision, to see that there is a 50% of enrollment in higher education, the gross increase in the enrollment in higher education, definitely it requires the use of a digital technology, or maybe the use of technology interventions. And apart from that, we need to bridge the technology divide. If technology, if we want to use it, or to use it as a force which is multiplier, thus the state needs to address these striking disparities in access to digital tools for universalization of education. If what all we are talking about universalization of education, that is for at a school level, or when we want to enroll our um, enrollment in higher education, we need to address the striking disparity that we are having with regard to the digital tools. It is both a state and a state government subject, where we can make the laws. The reforms which are proposed can only be implemented collaboratively, both by the center as well as the state. So the NEP 2020 seeks to bring a holistic change in the education system of India, and this can lay the foundation for multidisciplinary approach in higher education, and its success depends on the will and the way in which it will be implemented. So finally, I can say the complete implementation process, the effective implementation is possible only with the will and the way that we are going to implement it. So thank you so much.